The luxurious private jet soared through the sky, heading toward New York. Among the well-dressed passengers in business class sat a black woman in simple black clothing, with no jewelry, no designer bags, just quiet confidence. She didn't look like a billionaire, but Jessica Moore owned not only the plane, but also the entire airline. Flight attendant Rachel Henry was used to serving wealthy elites. She prided herself on providing excellent service, especially to those who looked rich. But when she noticed Jessica sitting comfortably in business class, something about her appearance made Rachel assume she didn't belong. Rachel walked up with a forced smile. "Excuse me, Mum, are you sure you're in the right seat?" Jessica glanced up calmly. "Yes, this is my seat." Rachel's eyes narrowed. "I doubt that. Business class isn't for—" She hesitated, scanning Jessica's plain clothes. "I mean, may I see your ticket?" Jessica remained composed. "I don't need to show you my ticket." Rachel crossed her arms. "I think you do. I can't have passengers sitting where they don't belong. Please return to economy." Jessica raised an eyebrow. "I'm exactly where I should be." Rachel scoffed. "Mom, if you don't move, I'll have to call security." Jessica sighed. "You really don't know who I am, do you?" Rachel smirked. "Oh, I think I do. Another passenger who thinks they can sneak into business class." And then, out of sheer frustration, Rachel did the unthinkable. She slapped Jessica's hand away. A collective gasp spread across the cabin. A nearby businessman immediately pulled out his phone, recording the situation. Other passengers whispered, sensing something was about to go terribly wrong for Rachel. Jessica slowly stood up, towering over the stunned flight attendant. She locked eyes with Rachel and said in a calm but deadly voice, "You're fired." Rachel blinked, confused. What? Jessica pulled out her phone, dialed a number, and within seconds, the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ms. Moore, is there a problem?" Rachel's face turned ghostly white. The realization hit her like a brick. Jessica Moore, the billionaire, the owner of the entire airline. Passengers gasped. The businessman recording whispered, "Oh, she's done for." Jessica sighed, looking at Rachel with disappointment. "You judged me by my appearance. You assumed I didn't belong here. And worst of all, you put your hands on a passenger, on your boss." Rachel stammered, I didn't know." Jessica gave her a cold smile. "You didn't bother to find out?" Security personnel entered the cabin. Jessica turned to them and said, "Escort her off my plane." Rachel pleaded, but it was useless. As she was removed from the aircraft, Jessica sat back down, sighing. She looked around at the shocked passengers and said, "Let this be a lesson. Never judge a book by its cover." And with that, the billionaire leaned back in her seat, sipping her champagne, as the plane continued toward New York. As the plane continued its smooth journey toward New York, the cabin remained silent, passengers still processing what had just happened. Some whispered amongst themselves, others stole glances at Jessica, realizing they had been in the presence of someone powerful without even knowing it. Jessica, however, was unbothered. She picked up her tablet and began reviewing some business reports as if nothing had happened. But the businessman who had recorded the incident couldn't hold back his curiosity. "Excuse me, Ms. Moore," he said cautiously. That was intense. "Does this kind of thing happen to you often?" Jessica glanced at him, a knowing smile on her lips. "More than you'd think." The man shook his head in disbelief. "People really don't know who you are?" Jessica chuckled softly. "People assume wealth has a look. If you're not dripping in designer brands or flashing diamonds, they think you don't belong. But I prefer being underestimated." A woman sitting across the aisle leaned in. "Well, you certainly taught her a lesson," she said. "But I have to ask, why didn't you tell her who you were sooner?" Jessica set her tablet down and looked at the woman. because people should treat others with respect, whether they think they're rich or not. The businessman nodded. That's true, but I have a feeling this story is going to go viral. He gestured at his phone. I recorded the whole thing. Mind if I post it? Jessica smirked. Go ahead. Maybe it'll make people think twice before judging someone by their appearance. Moments later, the video was uploaded with the title, Flight Attendant Slaps Woman, Not Knowing She Owns the Airline, Instant Karma. Within minutes, comments and shares flooded in. The video started trending, and Rachel's actions became the talk of social media. Meanwhile, in an airport office, Rachel sat in shock, her phone buzzing non-stop. News outlets were already covering the story, her face plastered everywhere. Her career in aviation? Over. Back on the plane, Jessica sipped her champagne and gazed out the window, knowing she had just sent a powerful message to the world, one that woo. As the jet cruised smoothly toward New York, Jessica's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. Her assistant, David Carter, was calling. She answered, David, what's up? David's voice came through, urgent but excited. Jessica, have you seen the internet? The video of that flight attendant slapping you is blowing up. It's all over social media and news sites. Jessica smirked. That was fast, David continued. People are outraged. Your airline's PR team is already handling media inquiries. And Rachel? She's getting flooded with backlash. Some people are even calling for airlines to train their staff better about discrimination. As Jessica's Rolls-Royce pulled away from the airport, she leaned back against the leather seat, her mind still buzzing. She had made a statement, but she knew words weren't enough. She needed action. Her phone rang. It was Lisa Carter, the head of PR for her airline. Jessica, your speech is everywhere. News outlets, social media, everyone's talking about it. You're being praised, but some people are saying the flight attendant shouldn't have been fired, that she just made a mistake. Jessica sighed. A mistake? Lisa, she physically assaulted a passenger. And let's be real, if I had looked like a wealthy white man, do you think she would have slapped me? Lisa hesitated. No, probably not. Exactly, this isn't just about her. It's about a mindset that needs to change, Jessica said. I want you to set up a nationwide diversity training program, not just for my airline, but for the entire aviation industry. Partner with other CEOs, let's fix this at the root. Lisa was silent for a moment. Then, Jessica, you're really trying to change the game, huh? Jessica smirked. Always. Just then, Jessica's driver spoke up. Ma'am, we're being followed. Jessica turned to look through the tinted windows. A black SUV had been tailing them since the airport. Her instincts kicked in. Lose them. The driver accelerated, weaving through New York traffic, but the SUV kept up. Jessica clenched her jaw. Who was after her now? Her phone buzzed again. A blocked number. She hesitated, then answered. A distorted voice came through. You should have kept quiet, Ms. Moore. Jessica's eyes narrowed. Who is this? The line went dead. She exhaled sharply, gripping the phone. This was bigger than just a flight attendant. Someone didn't want her shaking up the system. But Jessica Moore wasn't the type to back down. Drive faster, she ordered. This was just the beginning. Jessica's Rolls-Royce sped through the streets of Manhattan, weaving between cars as her driver skillfully tried to lose the black SUV. But the vehicle stayed close, determined. Jessica's heart pounded, but her face remained calm. She had faced business sharks, hostile takeovers, and corrupt executives before. But this was different. This was a direct threat. Her phone rang again. Blocked number, she answered, her voice steady. Who are you? The distorted voice returned. Back off, Ms. Moore. You're stepping on powerful toes. You don't want to make enemies you can't handle. Jessica smirked. Funny, I didn't know cowards made phone calls. The voice chuckled darkly. You think your money makes you untouchable. Stay out of this, or you won't be around to spend it. The line went dead. Jessica exhaled slowly, forcing herself to remain calm and calculating. Whoever was behind this wasn't just angry about a flight attendant losing her job, this was bigger. She turned to her driver. "Take me to the private security firm." Within minutes, they pulled up to a sleek, heavily guarded building in Midtown. The moment she stepped inside, David Carter, her most trusted executive, was already waiting. "Jessica, what the hell is going on? I just got word from our security team. There's been an attempted cyber attack on our company's servers. Someone is trying to erase your influence." Jessica clenched her jaw. "It's not just about me, David. It's about what I'm exposing." David's face darkened. "You think it's the airline industry? Someone with real power?" Jessica nodded. "Someone who benefits from discrimination. Someone who doesn't want me changing the system." David exhaled sharply. "What's the move, boss?" Jessica's eyes hardened. "We go public, bigger than before. They want me to be quiet? I'll make sure the whole world hears me instead." David smirked. "That's why you're the billionaire, Jess." Jessica turned to the head of her security team. "Find out who's behind this. I want names, and tell my legal team to be ready. This isn't just a fight for respect anymore. This is war." The battle had just begun. As the days passed, Jessica's life shifted into high gear. Every meeting, every phone call, every move felt like part of a larger battle. The threats against her grew more intense, but so did her resolve. She spent long hours strategizing with her legal and security teams, tracking down the source of the cyber attack and the mysterious voice behind the phone calls. They traced the cyber attack back to a shell company linked to several prominent figures in the aviation industry. Jessica knew who they were dealing with now, powerful figures who didn't want her shaking up their monopoly, men who had been entrenched in the old system of privilege and discrimination for decades. In a bold move, Jessica decided to release a public statement. She gathered a team of journalists, top media outlets, and influencers preparing to make her next big announcement. She wanted the world to know the truth about the threats she was facing and the corrupt system she was determined to dismantle. The press conference began with Jessica walking up to the stage, flanked by her security team and David. Cameras flashed, and reporters stood in anticipation. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice steady but commanding. "Today, I stand before you not just as the owner of an airline, but as a woman fighting against a corrupt system, a system that judges people based on their appearance, their skin color, or their background. But what I've learned in this journey is that those who benefit from this system will stop at nothing to keep it in place." A reporter raised a hand. "Ms. Moore, are you suggesting that powerful figures in the aviation industry are behind the threats against you?" Jessica nodded. "Yes. I know who's behind the cyber attacks and the threats on my life, and I won't stop until every last one of them is exposed." The room fell silent. "And as for the flight attendant, Rachel, let me be clear, her actions were just a symptom of a larger problem. Discrimination, judgment, and racism are deeply ingrained in this industry, and I won't let that slide any longer." Jessica paused, letting her words sink in. This isn't just about one person. This is about changing an entire system, about giving people the respect they deserve, regardless of how they look or where they come from. Another reporter spoke up. "What steps are you taking to make this change?" "First, I'm partnering with leaders across the world to implement mandatory anti-discrimination training and diversity programs across the entire airline industry. No one is exempt." She looked directly into the cameras. "This is just the beginning. If anyone wants to challenge me or threaten my life, I'll face them head on, but I will never back down." The room erupted in applause. This wasn't just a billionaire making a statement. This was a force of change rising in the face of opposition. After the press conference, Jessica's phone buzzed again. Another blocked call. She answered. "I hope you're ready to lose everything." The voice on the other end was still distorted, but this time there was a tremor of fear. "You're making a huge mistake, Jessica. You have no idea who you're up against." Jessica smirked. "I know exactly who I'm up against, and now the whole world does too." The battle was far from over, but Jessica Moore was just getting started. As the days turned into weeks, Jessica's movement gained unstoppable momentum. The media continued to cover her every move, and she became a symbol of strength and resistance against a broken system. The threats continued, but they only fueled her fire. Her airline's diversity programs were implemented, and other major airlines soon followed suit, pressured by public opinion. Her efforts didn't stop with the airline industry. Jessica's influence reached into other sectors as well, and soon her calls for change became a global movement. The powerful figures who had once sought to silence her found themselves under intense scrutiny. Investigations into the corrupt practices they'd long been hiding began. One by one, their hold on the industry started to crumble. Meanwhile, Rachel, the flight attendant, found herself at the center of a media storm. Public opinion was divided. Some continued to defend her, but many condemned her actions. Rachel's story became a cautionary tale, a reminder of how easily people could be blinded by prejudice and how dangerous it was to make assumptions about others. Jessica, however, remained focused on her goal. She knew that real change wasn't about individual victories. It was about systemic transformation. And while her enemies were powerful, they were no match for the collective force of the people who stood behind her. Months later, as Jessica stood on the balcony of her penthouse overlooking New York City, she received a final call, the voices of the past still lingering but growing weaker with every new victory. She smiled, knowing that her journey was far from over. The battles she'd fought had not only changed the industry, but had also inspired a new generation to stand up for what was right. Jessica Moore had become more than just a billionaire. She had become a legacy. And as the sun set over the skyline, she whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning."